And here we are with another Livingston Parish News group therapy session. That's the new name for our weekly podcast, brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. I am here with David Gray and Rob DeArmond, our lifestyle and sports editor, respectively. Will you guys go ahead and take a second and introduce yourselves, please?
Hey everyone, it's David Gray, lifestyle editor and news writer and COVID guy and whatever else we need around here.
Yep. The utility guy, the
That's
Swiss
it.
Army knife of
Exactly.
journalism.
Yeah, this is Rob DeArmond. I'm the sports editor here at the Livingston Parish News.
And today we're going to kind of start off the show talking about COVID. You know, our little Swiss Army knife over here. He's dealt a lot with it, especially recently, and he's been covering, you know, the daily updates and a lot of what the governor has to say. But first, we've hit the 1 year anniversary. It definitely changed a lot of what we do on our end of the spectrum. But I wanted to get everybody's perspective. At least this was actually David's idea, but to get everybody's perspective of what happened over the last year and how it did change things. You know, one of the things, Rob, and we're going to start with you, you know, it's interesting because last year they were able to, you know, by the skin of their teeth, LHSA was able to finish basketball. Baseball, softball kind of got started in the winter and then they just canceled it. So tell us a little bit about what it was like sort of easing into the summer. There was some summer ball, not a whole lot, no basketball, and kind of bring it forward into the new year.
It literally, I'm going back to thinking about that when school got canceled, and literally coaches are like, "Man, what are you going to do?" And you kind of go, "Really? We'll figure it out, but I don't know what right now." And there were literally some times when, you know, at that point, I think we were at home. You know, we were really literally quarantined. You're working from the house. Some mornings, I know I'd wake up and I'm like, I don't have anything going on today.
Right.
But then something would happen. I remember what kind of got me through it was, in talking to baseball and softball coaches, once the seasons got canceled, it was the kids who were, you know, they had those opportunities to play at the next level and play in college. And so I wanted to do a story on okay, how are you guys how are they knowing you're there? Because the plan is to come see you play at some point. They can't do that anymore. So I wanted to do a story on that, but it just so happened that some of these guys and some of these ladies who were playing softball, they just kind of happened to fall into place where they would find places and homes through video clips, social media, and that's how people would find them. So they didn't have to really rely on that. And going into the summer, you know, you kind of didn't know what summer ball was going to hold for you know, baseball and softball and things. And the fortunate thing here was for Denham. They obviously played their baseball games at North Park, which enabled them to play games because they weren't on an on-campus facility. The other part was that for the smaller schools who played summer baseball, the Louisiana Nationals out in Holden opened up their facility to allow some of the smaller schools to play summer baseball. So that's how they were able to get around it, which was, I did a feature on that because you get out there and you look and it's, they put it together. You know, your infield is some turf that they got from a football stadium in Texas, and you know, so you've got a yard line going, you know, sideways around the third base line, and you kind of look out there. There's no fence or anything, so it's kind of like the deal where when you were a kid, you're playing in the yard and you just throw the hands up when it goes into the, you know, I was like, okay, just literally walk out there. Okay, what are the ground rules? We got to, you know, let's go over this first so we can figure it out. But it was just getting those kids the opportunity to play. And I think, I mean, I've said it before here, you know, I think this is our third podcast, but we've learned so much from that point to now, to where we progressed. And you're looking at the, you know, they're holding the state boys basketball tournaments right now. And, we're making the transition into spring sports.
Right. So, and a little interesting too, because when you get into those fall sports, swimming, cross country kind of went off without a hitch. And that was predicted over the summer. You know, they were the least restricted sports. Football, on the other hand, had a couple of teams where it hit them hard.
Right.
And then early in the basketball season had a couple of teams where it hit them hard too.
Well, I'll go back to, I guess, you know, with Albany, you know, they're preparing for the last game of the season, you know, and I talked to Coach Janis and he's like, oh yeah, we're done, you know, just because they had, and the way it fell, it was the last week of the season. And at that point you're going 2 weeks in. So they had to basically, you know, opt out, if you will, of the playoffs. So they weren't able to, they obviously would have been in there and just had to opt out. And you get the basketball season and the Live Oak girls, I'm sure you guys remember this, but they were supposed to play their first district game that Friday. And Coach Yawn texted me and she said, we're in quarantine. So called her kind of immediately. And I said, okay, what's it mean for you guys? And she said, if we get done with the 2-week quarantine, that would put us eligible to play on the Saturday following what would have been their last district game. So they went into playoffs without playing a district game at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then French Settlement, it happened to them. That was on Friday. And then Monday, French Settlement played a game. Tuesday, that next day, Coach Martin at French Settlement called me and said, we're in quarantine now too. So they had to, basically cancel the rest of their season going into playoffs.
So very difficult, time for high school sports.
Right.
And it was also a difficult time for local events. So David, once again, dejected over here. So we're going to jump back over to him. One of the things that really is these big events that bring a lot of people to the parish and are huge for commerce. Now, a lot of businesses were able to sort of shuck and jive because, as we all know, and everybody has their opinion on it, but places like Walmart, Home Depot, they had the square footage to be able to basically keep their capacity regular and made a ton of money. But these smaller businesses kind of suffered through this because a lot of these big events that bring people in didn't occur.
Mm-hmm.
Things like the Tickfall 200, which we'll get to in a second because it has now been canceled for the second year in a row. Springfest, Fall Fest, those kinds of things. So tell us a little bit about your perspective going from, where you're hustling and bustling from events to events, especially in the spring and the fall, to everybody's canceling everything.
Yeah. Boy, this last year, I'll never forget, and I think you were there. I went to cover a play, and I haven't done many of those the last, 12 months. I went to cover a play at Denham Springs High, the theater department. I think your son was in the play. That was the day when Governor Edwards announced that schools were closing, that really when everything got serious. And it's kind of funny looking back on it now or thinking about it. No one was wearing masks. No one was sitting apart from each other. things that over the last 12 months have just become, just commonplace, wearing masks and social distancing. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, just kind of funny. I was thinking a lot about that night as, the 1-year anniversary came up earlier this week of when we confirmed our first case. But yeah, those, that's kind of been it's been one of the biggest struggles this year is a lot of these events, talking about Springfest and Fall Fest for downtown Denham Springs. That's what, these businesses look forward to, those type of events. And not only that, say Christmas in the Village. Those events drive a lot of people down there who, in turn end up shopping down there and, and maybe say they don't even buy something that day. Maybe they come back. Those things all work to promote the downtown area. And you've had these two, these big events canceled. And then talking about the Tickfall 200, what's even more special about that is that brings in a lot of outside money. Because, that draws, 1,500, 2,000 people, from not just from Livingston Parish, but, from Louisiana and outside Louisiana. I can't tell. I've gone before. like I said, it's been canceled 2 straight years now, but I've gone to the previous 2, I believe. And, when I talk to people, people from Georgia, Texas, North Carolina, like there was one person from Alaska one year. I don't know why you would come all the way around, but hey, that's what they look forward to. These type of big gatherings. That's what people want to do. And now that you're not having them, that's a lot of money that's not being spent at gas stations, at hotels, at restaurants. That's going to have this snowball effect. And talking to one of the organizers for the Tickfall 200, it's gonna hurt some people. So that's and we're making progress with the pandemic, but it's still gonna be some time before it's fully back to normal.
Sure. And from my perspective, getting into it, and today was definitely a group therapy session because we all said we were going to take about 40 seconds, and each one of us is going to end up taking about 5 minutes. But it's been interesting, because it's changed the way we do our jobs for a long time. It's been very interesting from my perspective to sort of watch public response to what the country's doing, what the state's doing, what the parish is doing, and all these different events that occurred in and around COVID, and how with the rise and fall of cases and hospitalizations, how people's opinion varies wildly on it and differently almost from week to week. So it's been very interesting to watch people's response to something that kind of, like with us, threw them off their game, threw them off their routines, threw them off the things that were normal. The word normalcy is used all the time, but we were never really sure, what does that really mean? Normal can change day to day. I think COVID has proven that. So, covering these governmental entities from afar, because I've got several at-risk people at home, trying to figure out how best to cover them, watching them, on my phone while I'm typing notes. It's all very different, and it hadn't been easy. It really hasn't. It hadn't been easy for us to not necessarily keep the paper going. I mean, there's been plenty to cover once things kind of got ramped back up, but it just hadn't been easy to adjust and stay adjusted, because eventually it will go back. So, been very interesting to hear y'all's perspectives on that. It's been a wild year, and it has been. It's been a year, and it looks like it's going to be a year and some. But we already talked about the Tickfall 200 being canceled. I do want to talk about the fact that there might be a light at the end of the tunnel, because we do have expanded vaccine qualifications. That was an announcement made by the governor, and I do want you to give us a little insight on that, David.
Yeah, no, that was that new Governor Edwards actually called it the worst kept secret, because the news because the state has over 2,000 providers that are eligible to administer vaccines. So whenever they're preparing to expand who's eligible for it, they have to send all these providers emails. The word's going to leak. So it kind of came out the day before the governor's announcement. So we all kind of knew whenever he's scheduled his press conference at noon on a Tuesday, which is also rare because usually they're on Thursdays, at the end of the week. We all kind of had a feeling that was coming. So yeah, it is expanded now. Now people who are 16 and older are eligible for the vaccine. Now there's a caveat with that. People 16 and 17 can only take the Pfizer vaccine. That's the only one that has been approved for people under 18. The other two, Moderna and then Johnson & Johnson, those are still for 18 and older. But you have to basically meet a series of have at least one of nearly 24 health conditions. And if you want to see what they are, you can go to www.livingstonparishnews.com, because it is quite a list, or it is in this week's paper, I believe, the full list. So if you want to just have that, it's available to you. But yeah, basically just any of these conditions that would put you at severe risk of having a serious or possibly fatal outcome from if you contracted COVID-19. So that's kind of what they're wanting to do. Governor Edwards, he spoke on the last few weeks that the appointments have been getting a little slack. That was the term he used, a little slack. So they wanted to add more people to it, and it's really kind of unclear how many people now are able to get a vaccine, just because you don't know how many fall into other priority groups and that sort of thing. But it's getting now. Before the recent expansion, it was 1.5 or 1.6 of our 4.6 million people. So roughly a quarter, something like that. I'm not a math major at all, but now you would imagine that with the latest extension, it would go to probably half. The officials are saying there's no way to tell how many exactly this makes it open to, but you imagine it's a significant chunk of the population.
Sure, and it makes it a little, it's a good thing, but logistically it makes it a little harder to track, because now you're up to 200 providers. Mm-hmm. How many people are going to
2,000.
2,000 providers, excuse me, wow. So 10 times as many is what I said. And, it makes it harder to track logistically. So I'm sure these numbers will continue to come out, but in terms of staying ahead of it, it'll probably just be like when they were reporting the COVID numbers. Whatever gets reported to them is what they are going to put out there. Yes. So again, please remember, go check us out, www.livingstonparishnews.com. It's also in this Thursday's paper. There is a list of the expanded criteria for those 16 and older who might have some sort of pre-existing condition that would qualify for getting the vaccine. And of course, there are some providers like Walmart where you can call and just sign up. Of course, they'll give you a date and a time to show up to get that shot in your arm. So, David, we'll come back to you. Rob, I want to jump over to you because one season, or I guess technically 2 seasons, boys and girls, has come to an end, not because of COVID, but simply because the playoffs have come to an end for basketball teams. Let's first talk about that absolute heartbreak for Doyle girls in their final, and then we'll jump over to Walker, who lost to a district foe in the semifinals.
Yeah, we'll talk about Lake Arthur and Doyle. Lake Arthur wins 62-61. Doyle had to come back from 21 points down at one point in the third quarter. And it's one of those things where, we get into post game and you look at it, and I'm talking to Sam and Presley Scott and Elise Jones, and I'm like, y'all, there wasn't really this big run that you guys made. It's just all of a sudden you just look up and go, hey, look at that. You're back in it, and basically, when I talked to Sam, they were trying to kind of defend some 3-point shots by Lake Arthur, and they still wind up doing really well from the 3-point line. I think they hit 10 in the game.
That's tough at that level.
So, and it was just one of those, they came out in the third quarter and they really started hitting them, and that kind of contributed to that 21-point deficit. But like Sam said, we just got to back to playing Lady Tiger basketball. Which is, in your face. We're going to start pressing you on the baseline, and we'll try to take you up court in your face and see what happens. And they, create some turnovers. They get down, and they've got a shot down at the end. And they wound up, if you hit a 3, you tie it, and Presley winds up getting a basket right at the buzzer to make it a 1-point game. But, in looking at it and thinking about it, I think they were in so much of a catch-up mode throughout the game. And they, I asked them, I said, you guys don't play from behind. It's not just something you do. You're used to getting that lead and just building on it the whole time. So you had to do it. So it was just looking at it. They're in catch-up mode, trying to, it's nobody's fault. Hey, y'all didn't take a 3. You could say that, but I think they're just in catch-up mode trying to get there.
Sure.
And then, that basket falls. And I remember looking over and Cortland Lacey is just kind of staring up at the, you see that 1-point difference, and she's just looking at the scoreboard like we're that close.
Right.
So.
And, it's tough because if you don't get down, that's probably a game you win.
Yeah. And the styles are really similar. I mean, but it's like Sam said, they shoot 3s. We shoot some 3s, but when you're trading 3s for 2s, the math doesn't add up.
Sure.
And
you
like
fall
David
behind.
said, I'm not a math major, but it's the same
Right.
same principle,
Yeah, and I mean, just a heartbreak to pull back within it, and then a putback right at the end is what seals the deal. So Lady Tigers fall just short of another state championship, very close to back-to-back. Actually, within 1 point.
1 point
of being back-to-back.
So
jumping over or moving down the road, Walker boys kind of expected to be a little bit of a rebuilding year, and yet here we are in the semis. Playing District Vosges Zachary. They're in Lake Charles to do that. So walk us through that game.
I was kind of joking with Coach Skiro. I was like, man, you got to go all the way to Lake Charles to play a district foe. Y'all could have just flipped a coin and played at somebody's gym. But, like he said, it's the reward for the kids to make it to the state tournament. I say that jokingly, of course, that they're district foes, but they got to go to Lake Charles to play each other. Zachary had beaten Walker before in the regular season, got off to a really fast start in the first quarter and beat them there. This one was a little different. Zachary's winning 15-14 after the first quarter last night. We're taping this on Thursday, by the way, so this is Wednesday night they played. And then Zachary scores 6, Walker 5 in the second quarter. So it kind of slows down a little bit.
Just a bit.
Just slightly. And then Zachary kind of comes out, and that's when they start pulling away. They got 15 in the third quarter and 22 in the fourth, kind of outscored them, just started pulling away. And it's one of the, it's just like you said, I think Coach Skiro and I have talked about, a few times over the past couple of days, and it's just kind of one of those deals where, you look at this team and you realize you've lost to Jalen Cook to LSU, and then Brian Thomas, decided not to play before he went with and committed to LSU for football. So that's 2 key pieces that you have to figure out, And a lot of it was when you see them early, it's, okay, how's this thing going to kind of mesh and come together? And I think pretty much every time I saw them, something started coming together. Another piece of the puzzle it started coming into play, And so in this championship game or this semifinal game, you got um, Gavin Harris scoring 18, and he transferred in from Santa Ma. So they started using him, became a really key part of what they were doing. And then Warren Young Jr. is 17, and he's been pretty steady all year long.
Sure. So for both of these teams, let's talk a little bit about when you get to a position like that, and I've referenced it before. You kind of look at LSU, pinnacle of college football in 2019, not so pinnacle in 2020. A little bit of COVID mixed in there, but what are these two teams looking at next year?
When you look at Doyle, you're losing, 3 senior leaders from that girls team, and Presley, Elise, and Cortland Lacey. They're going to be young, but I think in talking to Sam and in talking to those veteran players, they've done a good job of leading those young kids and kind of showing them, okay, this is how we do things. This is what needs to be done. And you're hoping that kind of carries over to what they do for next year.
Sure.
I don't know what that translates into to wins and losses for them, but I think it'll be a different team. But it's just it'll be interesting. I think just to see how it kind of I don't want to say changes, but to see how that team's a little bit different from what maybe we've seen in the past.
Sure. What about Walker? You said you saw pieces coming together. You lose one guy to LSU, another guy, technically you lose him to LSU, although he hadn't graduated yet, just committed to football and decided not to play basketball.
Right.
It sounds like they're going to have some youth that's coming back.
Yes,
so that lots to build on.
Absolutely. I think this is a building block for them. Absolutely. A lot of these guys will be back in the system, kind of know what they're doing now, kind of got it figured out. Obviously you want to be advancing. But when I talked to Coach Skiro, by the way, he won his 300th game against Ponchatoula in the first round of playoffs. He was trying to keep it a secret, I think. And I say that jokingly. He just didn't want a lot of attention to it. He said, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. But I say, Coach, it's 300 wins. That's a big deal,
yeah,
man. So they just, when you look at what Coach Skiro's done over the past, 5-6 years, it's a consistency that they've established. And it's something that he said, it's once we got it going, these guys bought in and they understand what we're trying to do. And obviously you want to try to get to the state tournament every year. And that's 4 straight years for them. So it doesn't get more consistent than that.
Sure. Very much the pinnacle of consistency. So, be looking for those all-parish teams to come out. They'll be deciding on district teams here pretty soon, probably.
Getting a couple of them in. A couple of them have voted on. I think I may be missing a couple, but we'll get there. Y'all just keep paying attention, and as we get them, you will see them.
Sure, and starting next week, we'll be talking a lot more about baseball and softball, which is already first pitches have already gone out for a while now. You can find those roundups at www.livingstonparishnews.com/sports. And as mentioned, next week might have an all-parish team to discuss for basketball, but we're going to be moving into baseball and softball with regard to sports. Coming back over to David, we talked a little bit earlier about adaptation, people adapting to what COVID has presented them. Sports did it, obviously, and they found a way to make it work. John Schneider did it, right? Opened his little drive-in movie theater out there in Holden. Very popular story.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked at how popular. I mean, I know he's a local celebrity here, but yeah, people here really love John Schneider. But no, he kind of started this earlier. Back in February, technically. Actually, its soft opening was Valentine's Day weekend. He played, I remember one of them was 51st Days. He played a bunch of other romantic comedies, just sort of a little soft opening to see the response to it. But he opened this own, he's John Schneider is always looking for ways to bring people to the studios, just to continue. He calls himself a storyteller. He loves telling stories. He loves bringing the people together for entertainment and that sort of thing. So this is a pretty safe way to do that right now. Having a drive-in movie theater. You're having people stay in your own cars. You're putting the big screen up. I think the projector's like 40 feet tall, something like that. I mean, it's the first couple weekends it's been packed. So they, it looks like they're having a good response to that, and it's also kind of getting people ready for his Bows Extravaganza. That's sort of the big event that John Schneider puts on every year, and like so many other things, last year that was pushed back because normally it's held in April, and last year it was pushed back to June or July. I can't remember the exact day, but it was in the summer, well into the summer,
and it was hot.
Yes, yeah, oh yeah, I was out there and it was hot, and so it's kind of getting people ready for that. Just one of those things, like you said, just kind of bringing some normal back to life. That's really what was. I think that's kind of what appealed to everybody with that story. Because yeah, like you said, it kind of exploded online, especially just because I think people were just ready to have something normal to do.
Right, and that around here, like you said, John Schneider is popular, so that's definitely something normal to do. So, gentlemen, it's been fun for this group therapy session, round 3. We've enjoyed the conversation. Again, here with sports editor Rob DeArmond, lifestyle editor David Gray, and news reporter and all-around COVID Swiss Army knife. We make up the editorial staff here at the Livingston Parish News. We gather once a week to kind of talk about what's going on, at least with regard to sports and lifestyle/entertainment going on in Livingston Parish. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for this episode of Group Therapy, brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. Please remember, we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube once a week in print on Thursdays. And we are also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. Please remember, if you would like to do a podcast with me, you can email me, McHugh, that's MCHUGH, at LPN1898.com. If you're a politician, business owner, what have you, maybe even an entertainment person, maybe we'll get John Schneider in here. We can, we can sit down, have a nice conversation about what's going on in your life, either politically, business-wise, or entertainment-wise. So appreciate these two gentlemen taking the time to join us. Appreciate you guys out there who are listening to this, and soon, as we move into phase 3 and kind of get a feel for it, we may be masked up, but we may be adding some video as we get our feet underneath us a little bit better with this podcast. But again, appreciate you guys joining us, and we will see you next time.